Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly.
The sun is a seething mass of activity, until it's not. Every 11 years or so, sunspots fade away, bringing a period of relative calm. This is called solar minimum, says Dean Pesnell of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, and it's a regular part of the sunspot cycle. The sun is heading towards solar minimum now. Sunspot counts were relatively high in 2014, and now they're sliding toward a low point expected in 2019 to 2020.
So, method one for reducing the amount of sunlight hitting the Earth is called stratospheric aerosol injection. What does that mean? Well, scientists pay attention to what happens in the natural environment. And something they've known for a long time is when you have very large volcanoes, we see a drop in temperature around the world. Why does that happen? Well, very big volcanoes like Mount Pinatubo that erupted in the Philippines several times, but in 1991, it lofted so much stuff into the stratosphere in the form of aerosols, sulfur dioxide, that you actually get a haze. This dark layer here is an after photo. Here's a before photo looking at the atmosphere. Here's an after. And you can see this drop. You see this big uptick in optical depth. That's where we actually introduce some dimming of the sun. And it lasted for a while, right? This stuff stays up there for a while, a few years. And there's a measurable drop in temperature. And we see this repeatedly when large volcanoes erupt. We see it with Pinatubo. We see it with El Chichon. You can look back through the record and see evidence of changes. So we're taking a lesson from Mother Nature. So the idea is, well, if Mother Nature can do that, why don't we?
Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. The risk of doing it against the risk of not doing it. And it makes the problem of how we govern it fundamentally harder and different and all. But I think the more we do research, the less easy this will look, the more complicated the environmental effects will look. And that's a good thing, because right now it looks too easy. So I think that if we do more research, we're likely to find out that it's harder and more complicated than we thought, and the side effects are harder to manage. Of course, the opposite reaction is possible. It's an empirical question how people will actually react to knowledge about this. Another reaction is to say, if these crazy scientists are so concerned about putting CO2 in the atmosphere, they want to think about these things, then that might actually mean we should be more serious about the risks of CO2 in the atmosphere. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free riding on our grandkids. The collaborators of mine working on the aerosol scheme are actually folks from Carnegie Mellon who focused on human health impacts. And while we haven't published it, that was the very first thing we did, was do the order of magnitude calculation in a level pencil and paper, but with an expert on human health impacts about whether there could be an issue. And for aluminum or other particles, there are a lot of toxicological things that need to get looked at seriously.
We breathe every day, we take 16 breaths a minute, and as a result, what's being sprayed, we are inhaling, it's going through our bloodstream, and it's embedding itself in tissues. These type of particles can cause things like Alzheimer's, autism, and cancer.
The ingredients of the patents held by government contractors are composed of solutions made of toxic metals, such as aluminum, barium, strontium, and manganese. High-altitude airplanes inject these solutions into the atmosphere, a process called aerosol spraying. This clandestine activity could be killing us and our planet. You can identify this easily. Just go outside and look up. You will see the trails that these jets spray often span from horizon to horizon. They sometimes appear in an unusual grid pattern or large X. Then if you really pay attention and watch them over a period of a few hours, you will see them spread out across the sky, turning a beautiful blue sky into a milky, hazy white.
This is the biggest elephant in the room, absolutely the biggest in the room. And I believe that if it could be brought to a level where there was enough cover for all the scientists, all the meteorologists, all the biologists, all the academia that knows this is going on, I believe they would pour from every corner. I do, but they would have to have the cover.